I'd like to talk to you today about some new software I've found to help in processing hydrogen alpha solar images. NAFE, or Noise Adaptive Fuzzy Equalization, is PC software that you can run on the data after you've completed the IMPPG part of the session to improve surface detail and contrast, period. There are some pros and cons, but overall it's a nice addition to your repertoire of software. You install and load the software, you get a human interface that looks something like this. So I'm going to open a file. First you choose either a TIFF or a FITS file or a PNG. Typically you choose a TIFF if it's the output of the IMPPG file. Mine is in this directory. So we'll start with this example. This is how the output looks coming directly from IMPPG before we've cleaned it up in Affinity Photo or Photoshop. What I do here is I select Activate, and I've chosen to look at the entire region of interest, the full frame. You can see the speed at which it's done there, and now here's the result. Immediately you see much more contrast on the disk of the sun. I can play around with some of these controls. I can increase the black level. That's too much, the prom gets hidden a bit, so I can play around with some of this. And the same thing for the white levels. And then the NAFE itself you can adjust. It defaults to 1.5. The most adjustment you can make is a 0.3, and that's usually way too much. I find somewhere between 0.15 and 0.22 is a good number. Now, you can already see one of the challenges with this software, and that is it does not give you a very high resolution output. You get a PNG file only. You can't get a TIFF or any kind of a higher resolution picture. So there's a lot of noise here which you're going to have to clean up in post-processing. So you would save the file, and you can default to different extensions, just at process at the end, and you'll see the choices are a full frame PNG or a scaled PNG. You have no other saving options. So I'm going to save it as a full frame, and now I'll give you another example. Here's another file that I processed in IMPPG, and now we're going to do the NATE process and watch what happens to the surface of the sun when this gets to 100%. Far more detail suddenly appears, but see all the noise that we have here? We're going to have to clean that up later in post-processing. Here's one more example. This is an image of an interesting prom. You're going to find after I perform the NAFE function, you're going to see much more detail in the prominence itself. Again, this is the output from IMPPG before I do further cleanup in Affinity Photo. Now you see extra noise artifacts that have come in here. Those are things that I would take care of later in the Affinity Photo process. I'd simply select this part and select the prominence itself, but not this other noisy stuff, and overlay that on top of the other image. So, pretty cool functionality. Here's a full disk image. Activate. If you don't have a strong processor, this can take a while, but the results tend to be worth it. 74%. And again, quite a bit more detail suddenly appears on the surface of the sun. And I would make some small adjustments, something like that. And then at this point, after you save this file, what I would do is I would drop it in as an additional layer in Affinity Photo or Photoshop, and then I would blend this layer on top of the original IMPPG file at perhaps 30 to 50%, and that would increase the overall contrast of the final image. I hope that's helpful. This is a nice new tool that you can use to pull out much more detail on the surface of the sun, and when used wisely with your post-processing other software, this can give you an improved result. Thanks for watching.